Welcome back, everyone, to Out of the Main. John, we are coming up to the home stretch here of season 3 of our little Yacht Rock podcast, aren't we?
Yeah, and I think I know the perfect way to kind of climax. You like to peak late, right?
That's true.
Fourth quarter is time to peak, and we're doing that right now.
Yeah, there's pills for that now, but yes. So we are, but interesting bookend because we started this season talking about when Yacht Rock died in its initial incarnation.
Yeah,
sounds that kind of pushed it aside, and the whole reason for this podcast from the beginning was discovering new bands and new music, and as well as old new music that we were finding from back in the 70s and 80s. And really early on, you and I discovered two, I would think, of the primary torchbearers, firekeepers. One, of course, we already interviewed, which was State Cows. Right. And the other one has to be our guest for today, none other than Young Gun, Silver Fox. Please welcome, everyone, the Young Gun, Andy Platts. I think I have this right. And the Silver Fox, Shawn Lee. Welcome, gentlemen.
Yeah. All right.
I don't know. See, people get us confused because I am the Young Gun of this particular podcast. You can tell by looking at me. So,
of course,
yes.
And I'm Silver, but the other part remains to be determined. So,
yes. So, welcome, gentlemen.
Yeah, good to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Good to be here, man.
Yes. So you are here technically all the way from the UK, and you guys have a new album out. It's new, relatively new. Ticket to Shangri-La. That dropped when?
That was 21st of October, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, not long ago. Not long ago at all.
So still fresh, still new. And are you guys playing? You have some tour dates coming up, right? European tour dates?
That's correct. We're playing in December in Holland, and we Belgium as well, Andy.
Holland and Belgium, yeah, and then we've got the UK happening in January, February. Some more Europe, but the big thing we're trying to wrestle with at the moment is actually getting across the pond into the States for next year.
Oh yeah,
we're looking at March for that, but watch this space. So. But yeah, we've been trying to make this happen for a while, and it feels right now with this record to be hitting stateside, definitely.
What would a stage presentation of Young Gun Silver Fox look like? How many other members are you putting around you, and what will your primary instruments be? We still have a little bit of confusion as to who does what all the time, so that's going to be part of what we want to try to uncover today too.
Well, yeah, well, live, it's been the same from the start. I sing and I play the Fender Rhodes.
Okay.
And Shawn stands and plays electric guitar.
All right.
And then there's bass and drums and quite often a horn section.
Yeah. Ooh, and then we're flanked by palm trees either side on the stage as well. So
yeah.
What do the palm trees play? Anything?
Yeah. They play it cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, I had a question. There was something in the press release that was sent to us, and it's one of the questions I kind of ponder myself a lot when I'm making my own music, but also I wonder how an artist goes about approaching this. You mentioned that now over a period of your first few albums, you've established what is the sound, quote, of Young Gun Silver Fox, and it really was a new thing, even though it pays so much homage to the 70s and 80s. You guys did a very modern twist on it. So you carved out a very specific space. Then the question becomes, how do you evolve from there so each ensuing album doesn't sound like a regurgitation of the previous, but also you're not stretching so far that people buy the album and go, okay, this isn't at all what I expected. How do you stay fresh with what you're making, but also stay connected to what you were?
That's a very good question. I don't think there's an easy answer to that, but I like to think that records should be a logical progression, from one to the other. They pick up where the last one ended, and hopefully they visit you find some kind of new spots to go. You know what I mean? You keep evolving and keep things interesting for yourself. And, I don't know. I mean, I also think too, it's about songs, man. It's about songs. And so it's about the quality of of that, and the songs need what the songs need. You know what I mean? You treat it like that a lot of times. So I don't know, man. It's if it feels good, do it.
I want to go back to the original when you guys first got together, because this kind of is a variation of the same question. So you guys, I understand, met on MySpace. Is that correct?
Wow.
Guilty.
We should explain to the kids that MySpace is what Facebook was before
Oh my
Facebook.
gosh.
But maybe I should explain Facebook is what Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok were. Who knows?
Yeah.
So you guys meet on MySpace and you guys strike up something of a friendship. And then at some point you decide you're going to collaborate. I'm curious, your first album, West End Coast, you obviously, it's very decided, purposeful. We're going to do this sort of, as John said, a modern take on the old West Coast sound. How did you guys come to that? And tongue in cheek, you know, the two different generations. How did you guys both meet and say, yeah, that's the music we want to do?
Well, I think Andy always says that, you know, it was kind of, you know, me that sort of hatched this plan. It just when I kind of actually worked with Andy in the studio, I just kind of realized that he was the missing puzzle piece to do this music, and I just thought together we could. Hi, Carla. My dog wants a treat. She's going. Meow. I just thought he was the you know the perfect kind of partner to do this music, and so I just thought we would naturally do it, you know, and I wanted to do it, and I think we wanted to work together, and so this just seemed to be like a great vehicle, you know, musically to explore, and you know, we just eventually, you know, started to find some time and started to do it, and I mean the rest was just you know, it just took its time, but we got there, you know.
Andy, your other work,
if I can just expand on that as well,
go.
just because it's obviously it's different from where I'm sitting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Shawn spearheaded this thing that was very much in his blood. You know, this music, whatever you want to call it, however you want to term it, is deep in his roots. It's, you know, he grew up listening to it on the radio at the time that it was all coming out. You know. I didn't, you know, I'm 40, maybe 44, and Shawn's got, about 20 years on me, just under 20 years. So when Shawn came to me to start doing this thing, I probably knew like the most obvious tunes of that kind of genre, you know, the real obvious stuff. You know, what a fool believes, that kind of level of notoriety. And it wasn't until we actually started making records that we began to forge our own thing. Partly because it was obvious what needed to be done from my end to build on what Shawn was writing, but also because it was a bit of an awakening for me, you know. It was a real journey of discovery. And so that really fed my interpretation of what this West Coast music was and what it was to be for Young Gun Silver Fox. So, yeah, a brilliant rabbit hole that I'm just never, ever going to get out of, I don't think.
Well, I was started to say, Andy, that so I discovered Mama's Gun after I had discovered Young Gun Silver Fox, but I hear a similar homage to music from an earlier time period. To me, not quite yacht rock or West Coast, maybe earlier soul or something. How would you describe your approach to that project?
Yeah, so, you know, Mama's Gun is a 5-piece band. I tend to write, you know, the songs for it, but the production and the arrangements that you hear go on the record, that you hear live, that's born out of 5 people and that kind of melting pot. With me and Shawn, it's just the two of us, and we're responsible for everything. We play everything, we write everything, you know. And yeah, Mama's Gun is that more classic soul, 60s, 70s soul influence. It's got like the rough edges, whereas Young Gun Silver Fox is like it's a sucked piece of candy. It's like smooth, no edges, man. It's just smooth as fuck. So yeah, but those are the two kind of vehicles. But they do cross over a little bit, maybe in like the use of harmony and stuff. But I do feel like they inhabit very different worlds. With Mama's Gun, I write soul music and soul songs. With Young Gun Silver Fox, it's the huge, like classic pop music chasm that exists there, and you can go from the real R&B side of it to the more kind of more rock oriented stuff. It's so vast, and that's why I love doing it.
Well, you mentioned earlier that when you get in the studio together, quote, and then also I've read in some of the liner notes or in the press stuff that a lot of this stuff now is done sort of remotely, where you're going back and forth. So you're not always necessarily working up ideas in the studio at the same time. I was curious going in, knowing that the two of you both, like you say, between the two of you cover everything that's on these records. What does sort of the song process look like? Is there a pattern that it sort of takes? One guy starts with this, that, and or is it completely across the board, or is there kind of a way that you've figured out a good process for this?
I'll answer that. There's two different ways, generally speaking. One way is I write like some instrumental tracks, which kind of sound like a record with no vocals on it, and I pass that over to Andy, and then he writes the melodies and the lyrics and sings on top of them, and plays a couple extra instruments sometimes, and he sends them back to me, and then that's usually about I guess it's usually about 60 albums like that, and then like the other kind of 4 tunes out of 10 will be these songs that Andy, he starts them, he writes the songs, he plays what he plays on them, and then he sends that over to me, and I sort of play on them and mix them and put finishing touches and fill a couple of holes wherever they might be. And that's generally how the albums are. You know, there's like, you know, yeah, kind of, it's usually about 6 tunes to 4 tunes, generally speaking, but you know, that's the kind of process, and every album's been like that pretty much.
I will say every album for me as a listener and a fan, I was thinking of this as I spent the entire weekend basically listening to all your records over and over again. And every time I listen to a new album of yours, I'm like, this is my favorite Young Gun Silver Fox album. And then I hear the next album, I'm like, no, this is the favorite one. And so they're all equally good. To your point, I think like you evolve, somehow you master what John was posing as a question to you, evolution without changing your sound. And so I love the way that this first record opens, John. And so maybe we could give people a taste of the very first track. I don't know if this is the first track you guys worked on together, but it's the first track on the record, and it's called, I forgot now.
Still got it going on.
Still got it going on.
Now, yes, there's some snarly guitar in that, and there is some aggressive horns. This feels like you've added something new to the mix. Even though you've touched on these things in earlier records, this one feels particularly like you let a little more grime into the mix, into the feel. Kind of makes you do that stink face a little bit, like, yeah, that's funky, you know? Yeah.
Interesting to have such a long intro before a vocal comes in, you know?
Yeah.
Normally I'd be like, that's usually not the way you want to go. You want to get into it quick, you know what I mean? Because people have a short attention span, but I don't know, there's something, it's a big showbiz intro, that song. And I guess it felt like the beginning of the album. It feels like the beginning of a live show. It just sort of sets things up, but we haven't really done that song, you know? It's got a different kind of feel, you know, that sort of halftime shuffle, you know. Yeah, it's a big tune, man.
Yeah,
you know,
it's got some unexpected hard syncopation in it too. When you think you've got it figured out, you're like, no, not quite.
Yeah, honorable mention to Nickel Thompson, who's the trombonist, who tends to write all the horn arrangements for us. So his fingerprints are all over that in the writing as well. It's got to be said.
Yeah, I had a question about that. So has that been the case throughout your 4 albums? Because as I was listening this weekend, I'm hearing, sometimes I feel like I'm hearing the Chicago horns, and sometimes I feel like I'm hearing the Jerry Hay, you know, syncopated horns. But is he always doing the arrangements?
Yeah, he didn't work on the first record, but yeah, all the other ones, yes. He is a big, you know, as a bone player, he's a big fan of James Pankow from Chicago.
Yeah,
he's a big fan. And obviously, Sea-Wind Horns. He's a super big fan of them. And you know, I mean, they're actually Tom and Nickel, the guys that play on the record. They're actually playing Jerry's horn arrangements now. Like for Jerry, like Jerry's like using them
Really?
to be the sea wind horns. Yeah,
Excellent.
because they're so good. Like Jerry's like, I mean, there's a wicked comment that Nickel sent me that from Jerry Hay about the song, you know, I Still Got It Going On. And Jerry's comment is, that's what horns are supposed to sound like.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can't beat that, really.
No.
Wow.
That would
So
be
you-
framed and hanging above my
Yeah.
wall so you can always see it.
Yeah, right. Is there since we're on process and we're living in an age where a lot of that retro gear, as you mentioned, the Fender Rhodes and all that stuff still exists and is around us, but we also have all these virtual versions of things. I don't know if you want to give any secrets away, but is there some sort of law or creed you live by that you have to use X amount of original stuff, or are you VSTs you're fine with? Is there some way that you kind of work that stuff in intentionally, the classic instrumentation?
Andy, you want to take a bit of that?
Yeah, I think on
decline too.
No, that's cool. I mean, this is all interesting, and I think it's interesting for people making music in 2022 as well. I think on the front end of things, we are quite traditional, quite purist about it. You know, analog signal path. So we're playing real instruments and we're miking them up and we're playing whole parts, and everything that's being recorded is as it would have been back in the day. You know,
Excellent.
And that's where the musicality and that's where the sound of the music is right, and that's where you get the arrangements right. But we have no qualms about recording digitally. Got no qualms about, you know, using plugins and stuff to mix. I mean, all the mixes are digital mixes, but it's very much the essence of what you hear is born in the analog domain, and it's born in the writing, and it's born in the quality that we're putting in before it hits a converter. It must be said. Of course, mixing adds a significant amount of polish and elevation to it and stuff, and a lot of those secrets are in the mix engineer's head as well, Pierre Duplan, who's mixed everything we've ever done with Shawn. So that gives you a few answers to that question. I'm sure Shawn's got some to add as well.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I mean, exactly what Andy said. I mean, you know, it's all about the what you put, you know, what you record, what you play, what you write, the arrangement, the range, and using the right instrument of choice that's a proper thing. And yeah, I guess we would be a purist about that, but you know, we do you know, obviously got no problems with using plugins and stuff like that, you know, and editing things and whatever. You know, it's a hybrid approach, but I think it's very much about the music. And I don't think you don't want to start, you know, using like VSTs of a Rhodes, or, you know, you don't want to like, you know what I mean? You just got to like keep it real. You just got to keep it real and use like as much hardware as possible and put as much humanity into it. You know what I mean? It needs to be real. And then you use the technology, you know, instead of getting used by technology. It's about making it do what you want it to do, and having sort of analog ears, you know, and having those sensibilities. You can get the analog out of the digital world. You know what I mean? But I would never want to be like totally purist about, you know, recording only to tape and only. I mean, it just gets ridiculous after a while. But I think instruments, the right instrument for the right job is really important, in the right part. And yeah, that's the music right there.
Well, speaking of the right instrument, I get all of my information from Twitter because that's just what a smart person does. But I saw a tweet from J.D. Riznar a long time ago. I think one or both of you got interviewed for his forthcoming book about yacht rock. The thing that all that I remember from the tweet is that he said both of you own a Fender Rhodes. Is that true?
True. Yeah, true.
Very cool.
Andy's Rhodes is Andy's Rhodes, and my Rhodes is my Rhodes. and they're not the same. Even if they were the same, even if they're both the same model,
Yeah,
they wouldn't be the same. They're all different. They're all different. You know, I mean, the E Rhodes was a special Rhodes, but then there's just something lame about people using the same thing. It's just something. There's just something about, you know, if it sounds good, it sounds good. You know what I mean? And there's that. And screw anything else. You know what I mean? But the whole idea of everybody using the same thing just seems a little bit cheap and nasty. You know, or Keyscape or whatever. Oh yeah, the CP70 is great on Keyscape. It's like, okay, well, you know, great, you know, use it if you want, but I got no interest in that, you know.
Right.
You know what I mean? It just doesn't serve a purpose, you know. I mean, there's these weird things because with certain instruments, you don't like, oh, hey, I'm gonna use this microphone, but I'm gonna use a you know, a plugin that makes it sound like a U47.
Yeah, right.
You know, or whatever. He's just like, no. With guitars, it's like, you know, with modeling and stuff like that, it just can't go there, man. It's like you got to use the right thing. It's kind of like if it needs to be a Strat, then it's a Strat. If it needs to be a 335, it needs to be 335. You use that, and it's same with drums. It's kind of like if you're playing drums, it's kind of like, you know, you got to like choose the right snare and the right cymbals and play them right, and the tuning and the dampening, and so it just got to be like unilateral. It's kind of like with the keyboards. It's kind of like, even though, you know, analog keyboards are moody as hell, you know, and they go out of tune and they're a pain in the butt. But you know what I mean? Sometimes, you know, they give you something a little bit funky and you got to deal with it. And so it forces you into a direction and you have to compensate somehow and pivot. And those are the things that make things different, or how it's slightly out of tune. And then maybe you have to like process it a bit more to be more out of tune, to be more in tune.
It sounds intentional, right? Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? If everything's perfect and predictable, then you tend to get a perfect and predictable result, you know?
True.
Chaos theory.
True. Yeah. Well, I think we got your answer, John, about purity. We definitely.
I know. Boy, does that give me a lot to think about. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And see, that's why these guys are on the Rushmore of modern yacht rock, because the standard is so high with what you're doing. It's so impressive.
I think we would have. Oh, go ahead, Shawn.
The standard is so high to begin with. So straight from the get-go, you know, it was like, oh man, if you're even going to try to do this, it's like we got to like aim for the moon, man. We got to like really, you know, we've got to like try to meet the standard. So we started off trying to do that and feeling like that. I mean, I don't know about Andy, but I felt like it was really incredibly hot, such a high, you know, standard to reach for. I didn't know if I, you know, I thought I was going to really have to try hard to even get close to it, you know. So for me, it was a revelation just to realize it. I think when we got into the second album, I realized that we were doing it. I was like, wait a minute, we can do this.
It's a two-headed beast. There's trying to live up to the very best of what has gone before, you know. Yes. That very best of the whatever is late 70s, early 80s period of what we're talking about here. That on its own is a tall order. But then there's your own beast that you need to feed, you know, your own desire to improve. Me and Shawn are, you know, fucking self-flagellating desire to just get better and better and better. We're massively, you know, fanatically interested in the record making process and about songwriting as a start, but we just want to improve exponentially. It would be really sad if you peaked out on your first record and then it just died like a whimper. We feel like we've, you know, it happens, you know, but we feel like it's natural evolution, natural progression is just felt right the whole way, you know. And it does come down to songs as well. A lot of what we're talking about, you know, you make the most impeccably produced recorded album without a single memorable tune on it, and it's going in the trash. Do you know what I mean? It's got to be partnered with really good writing. So that's where we shine the light, I think.
Totally. I think Andy too, interestingly enough, I think Andy's really obsessed about his vocal chain, because he's constantly like changing his vocal chain and trying to find like the magic signal path, and like every, it's always changing, so there's definitely a pursuit, to like try to find the the elusive perfect thing,
Yeah, for each song, I must add, not like a one chain for everything. It's about identifying the right stuff, like you saying, the right tool for the job. You know what I mean?
Well, to that point,
okay.
I was sorry, real quick. I was just going to say to that point, what I also noticed about your vocal is that it perfectly at home up in the falsetto as well as down in the deeper sort of, chest voice register. So how do you explore what the right tool is for that job? Is it just a feel thing? Like, when you're writing, is it like, all right, this needs to go here and I'm going to be up here? Or is it later as the song evolves, you just kind of literally finding your voice?
No, I'm a victim of my own aspirations. I think I always write shit that's just way too high for me to sing. And I kind of, all right, fuck. The song sounds great in this key. I got to live with it. So that's where it ends up going. But no, I'm comfortable reaching, high notes with the falsetto and the chest voice. But it's all about the emotion, really. What does the line want? What does the story want? That's what directs you, as well as the kind of timbre of the music and the even a chord voicing can alter how you're going to sing, determines how you fit in the piece. So there's the boring answer is there's no one way. There's no one process to it, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and hats off, as you said earlier, to the mixing engineer, because I was going to say earlier I've been intentionally listening, like Tom said, so it's been more of a headphones listen lately, and the vocal mix, the blend, and the way that the stereo is used. I urge everybody to give a headphone listen to this stuff, because it just wraps around you so beautifully, and your vocals will go from this big like group unison falsetto, and then they'll break into harmonies, and you just feel like you've got this wonderful space around you when you're listening on headphones.
Yeah, but by background vocals in terms of Young Gun Silver Fox, it's a pretty big feature.
Yeah.
That ties in nicely with music of that era. But you got so much at your disposal with vocals, just the dynamic range, the timbre, the way it pairs with a lyric at a certain time, syncopation. It's like an orchestra of sounds ready to go, and if you can use it wisely, it adds such another interesting color to the music. And I think I'm always trying different stuff with vocals. I love doing the kind of MJ thing where you're tracking up one note, you're there, then you move back 2 feet, then you move back 3 feet, 5 feet, turn up the gain, jump on a different mic, thinking it that way, or just super tight, one double trackers. It's whatever the line needs. But Shawn and Pierre, to their credit, know how to take what I've done and elevate it again.
Are you engineering your own recordings, your vocals, or?
Yeah, I engineer everything I record here. Yeah.
Does that get really tedious to have to do both when you've got? I mean, the vocals is a lot of work.
No, it's just I'm interested in it, man.
Okay,
I'm interested in it as much as anything else. So I want it to be best version of this idea, or best version. That's all I care about. I only care about it being best. So I haven't got time to kind of be pissed off about it.
I think
I'll be pissed off if I sing it shit, but and that's where it should be.
Yeah.
I think Andy's a really good engineer. I think, just generally speaking, he's really good. He's really good in the studio, man. He's really got his shit together. You know what I mean? And so it's kind of like, I think on the one hand, it kind of looks like, Andy's doing a lot more than I think people know. Like his skill set is really like, it's really big. It's really big. And it's an interesting skill set as well. You know what I mean? So he's a polymath.
Absolutely. Well, so Ticket to Shangri-La just dropped. It is now my current favorite Young Gun Silver Fox album until the next one comes out.
Well,
I was reading something. I think There.
I got the
that-
vinyl here of West End Coast. So.
Oh, that's my favorite. Yeah. Shawn, I think it was something that you either said or wrote in another interview. There was a certain song, I think that Andy sent you as you were recording this record that really stood out at you. As you're like, oh, this is special. This is the tune. Do you remember which one that was?
Yeah, Sierra Nights.
Mm.
Yeah,
And what was it about
song's-
that song that just caught you instantaneously?
Well, I mean, it was so, you know, it was like, it was almost like, you know, somebody reached their hand out to you and grabbed it, threw you straight into a roller coaster and went down the biggest thing. And you were like, whoa, you know what I mean? It took you someplace else, like instantly. It was such a, it was a shock. It was a shock. I mean, like when it came on, I was just like, holy shit, you know, like I hadn't heard that before. It was different, but it was instant, and it was, you know, it was magical and evocative, and it really did sounds, on first listen, before I put anything on it, it sounded like a record. You know, it was almost like, okay, you know, how am I gonna, you know, what am I gonna do to make this better? Even though I knew that I would, and that's, you know, that's at that point, that's my job to do that, and I actually love that. You know, when you start something yourself and you're responsible for every note and every layer of it, it's really cool to get something where somebody else has done that, and then you have to find your space in it and find how you can take what somebody else has done and elevate that, and sometimes do that with hardly actually doing very much. And I actually love that, man, because it's such a different way of working. But yeah, that song just blew me away, and it still does. It's like, I'm learning it now, you know, and it's kind of like I'm still like, you know, I'm still in love with it, and it's such a beautifully written song, and it's so special, that song, man. I just I can't wait to play it live. I think it's gonna be magical. It'd be magical when we play it well.
Yeah.
Magical.
Yeah,
So, Andy, what was the inspiration for that tune? I mean, obviously, it left a mark on Shawn. What was it about that song?
Well, the genesis of the song was reading the novel Don Quixote, which is, you know, everyone had lots of time to do shit across those 2 years. So I read a stupidly big novel, which took me about 3 months. But it is just the sound of me trying to write the song of the book. You know, these two characters wandering around rural Spain, surrounded by mountains and violence and their love for each other. That's what fueled it. You know, I really was trying to just create this space, this thing that was like born in its own egg sac, and it never left. Do you know what I mean? It's just it's on its own. It's birthed, and it'll die there as well. And then it won't die because it's a fucking song, but it's, I don't know. Yeah, I was just trying to distill something. And I think the whole Canyon kind of Crosby, Stills, Nash vibe partnered really well with that. And a bit of the kind of Steely Dan thing in there as well.
For sure.
Originally did have a piano kind of doing that bass line along with it, and it just sounded way too much like Ricky Don't Lose That Number.
Yeah. Well, real quick on Don Quixote, I don't know if you're familiar with the band Toad the Wet Sprocket, but they had an album out in the 90s called Dulcinea.
Right.
And there's a song on that called Windmills. So if you want to go listen to Windmills, you can see how Glenn Phillips was also.
Well, obviously, Windmills of the Mind is based on that, isn't it, as well?
Yeah. Right.
The backrack thing, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I had one more quick question, Tom, if I can fit this one in.
Please do.
So you've done we're 4 albums in. It's been roughly every 2 years. What'll happen now? Will you sort of clear the decks and start fresh once you get to the point where you are going to make a next album? Or is this like a constant ongoing process where you've got songs that carry over? Or is it better for you to just say, okay, we're going to cut it off here and start totally fresh at whatever period down the road?
That's a good question.
It's a weird combo of the two, I think. There are songs written from previous eras and sessions that have ended up on later albums, definitely.
Okay. All right.
But in parallel with that, there is always a bit of a new record.
Yeah.
Let's maybe talk about a couple of things we might want to focus on doing on this record. We might not have that discussion, but there's definitely always a sense of turning a corner. It's new time, but yeah, you can't create now or in the future without looking back at the past. I don't think you can't do that. So it's always relevant what you've done, and that sometimes includes songs that haven't been used or have been fully developed or fully written. There's a song called "Rolling Back" on the new album,
my favorite,
and that chorus progression, I've had that for like 3 years. So I had that before the third album, Canyons, and it didn't know what it wanted to be, and I wasn't gonna rush it. I was like, just let it bubble up when it does, because the cream will rise to the surface
and it
in
did.
the end. So.
My favorite, yeah.
But I know Shawn's got some take on this as well.
You go ahead, Shawn.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, there's always that once an album comes out, we start to promote it and play gigs and all that, and you do that for a while, and you work on other things as well. You go off and do some other directions. For me, there's always a pullback to Young Gun Silver Fox. Like, I need to be doing this music because there's something like really special about it, and it's a great place to go. It's just it fulfills me on a lot of different levels. So
yeah,
I have to go back in there and start like digging in the dirt again and like birthing tracks and seeing where they go. I think at the point that we're at now, 4 albums in, and I think particularly with this last one as well, there was a lot of thought about the lineage of records. Once you get into it a bit and you have a catalog, you have to think about like connecting these things, and what have we not done, what and you start to like think about how you play stuff live too, and what fits into the set, you know what I mean? And so you try to fine tunes, and so you think about all these things before you make something, because you want to make something that like adds to the story and fits with what you've already done, but also some sort of progression forward with the music that keeps you into it. And so this is sort of you have to consider all these different things when you're doing it, and then I start doing it, and sometimes it's kind of like some of the tunes that I did for the instrumentals I made for this record, that they didn't have songs written against them, and I don't think Andy will write over them in the future. I think they're just like things that are in there, but because I think we both prefer to move forward. But like sometimes those tunes, I wouldn't say they were exercises, but I was giving myself opportunities to explore certain ideas or certain angles, and like getting my chops together on them, you know what I mean? And maybe it takes 2 or 3 goes at something to like get something. It's like, yeah, that's the one, you know what I mean? And that's a lot of that comes down to Andy. I send him the things I do, and he gravitates towards the things that he gravitates towards, you know what I mean? And for whatever reason, but I think I also think about Andy's voice more now than I did before, maybe, because I want to make something that accommodates a song more, rather than something that's like makes it difficult for him to write over, even though I think that sometimes forces him into a direction which is interesting. But I kind of like, I think we kind of know each other more as well.
Yeah, true.
So I think it's more simpatico. We're better at doing it now, and we want to be better at doing it. So I think that's just the way that it goes.
Cool. Well, my last question is sort of you referenced Ricky, don't lose that number. I'm curious if you ever intentionally drop little audio Easter eggs in a song here or there that might be a specific nod and a wink to songs from our past.
Yeah.
Audio Easter eggs.
I tell you what, I've done a couple of times, and the Andy's done it as well. As we've referenced ourselves a couple of times. There was the Lenny, our song Lenny, and then in Kingston Boogie, he mentions there's a bar, called Lenny's.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
it connects. And there was a little figure that I did thing, which I used in a couple of songs. I did it, I think, both like without thinking about it and thinking about it at times. It became just like a little signature. I don't think anybody other than Andy and really probably ever noticed. It's more early on in the first two records, but
Okay.
yeah, there was this little phrase that I used in a couple of different songs. Yeah, as it's just a kind of it's a like a signature little nugget,
Mm-hmm.
That's a true Easter egg. It's all for an audience of one, your co-writer.
Yeah. Yes, Easter egg between the two of us.
Yeah, cool. Well, everyone's got to go out and get this record. This is out on vinyl, correct? We can Shangri-La on vinyl and CD, I'm assuming, and of course you can spin it everywhere. But seriously, guys, all four records are my favorite. So all equally good, no drop off from one to the next. Kind of leaves a high bar for the next one, but I'm sure you guys are up to it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I ain't worried about it, man. We gotta just do what we do.
Just have fun
and do it as good. It's good as good as we can do it.
Do it in the States because we need to see some tour dates over here.
Yeah, man. It's gonna happen.
Get Detroit on the calendar.
Yeah, man.
All right.
Yeah,
good.
it's happening. It's happening.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot, guys, for coming on. Best of luck to you, and hopefully we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah.
All right, cheers, guys.
Thanks for having us,
All
man.
right.
All right, man.